it's got True Vision in it, which again was a very, very divisive topic before 6.0 when they did the original tests, and add all that together and people go, no, sorry mate, I ain't looking at that.
I think one of the... Hey everyone, and welcome back to what is now going to be called the Community Contributor Podcast. This is the first time I'm calling it this, but we have had 3 episodes prior to this one. This time, I sat down and spoke to Petty360, who is a community contributor on YouTube. I will link to his channel in the description, but for now, I will leave you with our conversation. That is the weather for us, yeah. But, tanks.
Yes. Thanks.
Yeah, this is a sort of series that I just sort of thought of it one day. I thought, I'll just go talk to everybody.
Yeah.
and see how the conversations go. So, and this morning I did Google the definition of a podcast, and this is a podcast.
Yeah, it's
so
pretty much a podcast. Yeah.
I'm going to start calling this the Community Contributor Podcast. So you are the first guest on the Community Contributor Podcast. So welcome.
Fancy.
It is fancy. Yeah. You did send me some. Well, in our messages, you sent me some items that you wanted to discuss.
Yeah.
So we can get into that, but the first question I ask everybody at the very start is, how do you think the game's doing as of right now?
Well, it's a hell of a lot better than it was since the 15th of December on 2020. A hell of a lot better. Like we've come a long way in like nearly 2 years. Well, yeah, year and a half now, isn't it? Really.
Yep.
Like, it's horrible thinking back to those first few days after 6.0, where it was pain to play the game because the UI had been decimated. The game, there was weird bugs as well, like the weird bug where there was the line of sight thing where people would disappear around corners and they'd completely disappear and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it felt like a bit of a chore to play, to be perfectly honest. The game for a good month or two, or more than that, to be perfectly honest, because it wasn't what it was before, and they'd done whatever they'd done, silly decisions, and why they pushed ahead with it, I'll never know when it wasn't finished. But now it's in a far better state. Like, it's better now that we've got more maps back in play, which is definitely an improvement. We're not seeing Abbey and Mountain Pass on repeat over and over and over again.
It was interesting you say that. I miss playing Abbey, actually. We had it for so long.
I know. Abbey was one of those that I never minded. If I played at tier 8 or below, I never minded. When it came to playing at tier 9 and tier 10, it was a bit of a chore.
Yeah.
Just the way it was. But tier 8 and below was fine. Same as Mountain Pass, to be perfectly honest. It's kind of one of those things that I think Mountain Pass in Ghost Town and that are now like tier 4 and below or something like that.
Yeah, I think they're tier 5 and below, I think. Which is a shame because Ghost Town, I thought that was absolutely fine at all tiers.
Yeah, I had no problem with Ghost Town at all. Like I thought I could do, no matter what tank I was in, I could do something on it at least. Don't get me wrong, it was a bit more challenging to play it in stuff like light tanks, but there was still opportunity to flank. There's still opportunity to get round and change positions and get flanking shots and stuff like that.
And it was it's a map that even if you have artillery, the layout of the map makes it very difficult for them to have artillery. So it's like it was a map that meant even if they had artillery, it's like they didn't.
Yeah,
if you know what I mean. So there was
only a few certain positions where they could truly get you, and if you took those positions, you knew that you were in danger essentially. But it's the risk you took on, right?
Yes. So yeah, the state of the game as it is now for you is, are you happy with it? Would you be happy if they sort of left it where it was, or are there things that you want to see come back or improve?
Well, there's still things like more maps, having more variety. Like the UI obviously has got a lot better since 6.0. Like, it's nice to be able to have the map back in the right-hand corner, the green, red, what have you. There's still little customizability options that they could put in. You know, there's stuff like at the minute, like the reticle, for example, is a thing that it is what it is. I don't mind it that much, but I liked the old reticle before 6.0. Also with PC, like if you're playing on PC, you've got the choice of, well, you can just change it to like one of 10 billion different options to what
you can,
to suit you. Yep. It's stuff like that. If they brought in more customizability, it would be a lot nicer with the UI. Add to that stuff like commander warning, for example, you know, going out in a tank without your commander. Quite frustrating when you just go, oh, pick a tank, and then don't notice that you've not got a commander. And you sit there going, wait, why is detector going off when I'm not 6 set? Oh.
Yeah.
You know. So, like, I get their point that they, you know, because commanders are optional now. I get their point that it might be annoying for people for it to keep popping up all the time telling you you've not got a commander. But if there was like a customizability option in the settings to just say, oh look, I can check this box and it will warn me every time I don't go out, I try and take a tank out without a commander, that would be great. Why they don't do these things is beyond any of us, to be fair. But you know, just having more customizability with the way we can play the game is always nice. I mean, for me personally, I started playing this game way back in 2014, and then ended up playing PC for a wee while before coming back because I found some of my workmates played it.
Yeah. And
when you're coming back and you find that there's, you know, all the stuff that you could do with PC, like changing all the different little things here and there, and you come back to console, it was very limited with what you could change. It sort of leaves you wanting just those little extras. But I suppose that might be first world problems, but you know.
An interesting point you've made there. Well, two things. You've mentioned the aim reticle. So the old aim reticle was a really small circle in the middle, with a larger circle shrinking down. As you know, that was your what's the term for it? Like that's the area that your shot would land in theoretically.
Yes.
So you like the solid circle shrinking, and at the moment we've got this sort of chevron-y dashed circular shape getting smaller. You prefer the old one?
Yes, definitely for me. Like, I always preferred that. That's one of the things I changed when I played PC, because that was one of their options to do it. You could have a solid circle rather than like the dotted lines around. And that's one thing I always liked about when I was playing console, was having that sort of circle.
Okay.
It's only a small thing, but you know, it's one of those things, isn't it? It's like when they changed the maps and they brought that in. I think they probably thought it was only a small thing having the map in the left-hand corner rather than the right-hand corner. But it's just one of those things that you just prefer, you know. It's why you know, you kind of like that sort of thing. Comfortability, comfortability with playing the game, if that's even a word. I don't know. I think I've just made a word up. But, you know,
it's like I know what you mean. It's the muscle memory that you have after playing the game for so long. Your eyes just default to a certain corner for a particular bit of information in a battle, and if it's moved, you're caught off guard, and then you just lose your focus on that moment in the game. So I can understand that. Yeah,
it's like with the team listings. Like, I don't know about you, but the team listings that we had before 6.0 is obviously far better than we have now, where you had the big map. It told you what tanks the enemy team had on left and right, or what on your team and their team, but it also told you the players that were playing in them as well. So you could see who was in a match, you could see what tanks were in a match, all on one screen without having to flick between two pages. That was always nice. I always felt like you'd see someone in game and go, oh, I know them, or, you know, half the time you sort of just, well, if you're like me, I don't check half the time, and then I'll find out. Someone goes, oh, I saw you in that game. Did you? Oh. Oh, right. Didn't check.
The only thing I can think of to justify having the two screens is the information they're displaying at the moment is the whole map, the full gamer tag of the player, the clan of the player, kills, assisted damage, direct damage, and no, they don't show XP in game. The only thing I can think of is the amount of information, and this ties into another issue that people have had with the update, is the amount of information they were showing. If they were to put it all on one screen, it would be too condensed, because something people have complained about is that if you're just a casual player and you're playing on your TV in your living room and your couch is like, I don't know, 8 feet away from your screen, you can't read the finer details. For me, that's not an issue, because I'm playing on a monitor that's like 2 feet away from my face, so I can see everything. Yeah. So for me, it's not an issue, but I know for a lot of casual players, they were saying, I can't see the information. So I think two screens for that information is the only thing I can think of that would explain why they did that. Because it'd just be not enough screen area for the casual player.
Yeah. It's just one of those things that I think, even with what we had before 6.0, I think that worked anyway, because it was clear, like you'd have the number saying, I've killed 2 people.
Yep.
Then you'd have the tank with the tier. And it was all fairly big font, so it was dead easy to read. And then you'd have the gamer tag that would scroll. Obviously, if it was a big gamer tag, it'd scroll telling you who they were.
Yep.
And then the map. And it was kind of just as simple as that. It just all sort of fit in and it worked. Whereas when they've changed it to this, even the font is smaller, even now, than it was before then. And I know they've done a lot of work to keep changing that and keep correcting it, making the font slightly bigger, slightly like originally when they released it, they didn't have it. They'd have like just the white letters, but no like black shading behind it, which would just make it harder to read. Whereas they added that, for example, outlined all the letters, so it makes it easier for anybody to read it rather than the white against the black background or whatever you are. So they've done a lot to change it. It's just a shame that they had to do all that, right? But
I think there is an element of if it's not broken, don't fix it, sort of thing. But they did try to fix it anyway. I'm not sure if we'll ever fully understand the decision-making process. I mean,
I don't think we'll.
Yeah,
that's just another thing. I don't think we'll ever understand why 6.0 happened. There's probably reasons behind it that we'd never even have a single clue about working out.
Something in my last conversation with Slapperfish, a point he made was it must have, well, it's speculation obviously, it must have been contractual to say like you've got a deadline.
I think there was something behind it, because it was definitely like, we have to hit this point, it has to come out around that point there, and that's it, that's final, that's happening, right? Whether it was Daddy Wargaming saying, hey look, you've got to do this, or there was something that was broken somewhere that they just had absolutely no chance of fixing, and they were saying, look, if we keep adding to this, it's going to keep going down and down and downhill.
Yeah, it's going to break,
who knows? We can only speculate,
of course,
unfortunately.
The point about commanders going out into a battle without a commander, this does seem to be a thing since 6.0, and I'm actually struggling to remember what was in place prior to that. Was it on the tank? If you had the tank, there was a big grayed out area over the little tank icon that said no commander. Was that what we had before? It was really obvious.
I think it was, yeah. It was like you just couldn't pick the tank. You had to put a crew in the tank. So as soon as you go onto it, it just wouldn't let you do anything with it. You had to then go and get the crew or buy a crew or...
so you couldn't actually take a tank out without a crew?
Not at all. Not at all. No, it wouldn't let you. So you had to have the crew for the tank for it to work. Which is why it's kind of one of those things that I think frustrates a lot of people with not having the warning and the fact that you can just take the tank out without a commander, because it's like, just being used to... people are probably getting more and more used to it now, but especially after it, it was like, I'll just take the tank out, it won't let me go without a crew, and then it's like, it did,
Yeah,
So that's one of those changes that I don't understand why they did it, but It made
yeah.
I don't know.
I'm trying to...
With the new crew system, it's kind of like I prefer it in a lot of ways, but then there's some other things that I don't.
Yes.
You
I
know,
was just trying to rationalize
hit and
that.
miss.
If you're a new player, a new player logs in and you can get tier 3, for example, but you need 500,000 silver to buy your first crew. Now,
Yep.
either prior to 6.0, I believe you just got a crew. A crew came with the tank.
You had a 50% crew, a 75% crew, and the 100%. The 100% was, I think it was 1,000 gold, which is a lot. The 75% crew was 100,000 silver, and then 50% crew was free. So obviously your tank was way worse with the 50% crew, but you'd get a free crew, and then you could slowly but steadily it'd level up to the point where you could put crew skill on it, it'd work at effective 100%, and then you could make it better. Or you could, like I say, go with the 75% crew and you'd be nearly there, and it'd take 10 battles, 20 battles, and you'd have it fully leveled up, and then you could start picking this crew skill. I think with the new crew system, a lot of new players will probably never have a crew. Because I don't feel like, as you say, I don't feel like the game ever explains to them, hey, look, I mean, you've got your tank now, look, it's swish, it plays well. But, hey, if you put a commander in it, it becomes even better. And I don't think there's anything in the game that will tell people, hey, look, just if you buy this commander for 500,000 silver, your tank's going to be way better. There's no cue for that. And that's something they could definitely do better, explain the commanders and what they do to newer players.
Yeah, for me, being told that a crew is 500,000 is like,
yeah.
You know, okay, fine, 500,000. If I put a ×2 silver boost on an Era 2 light tank, I can get that in one game. But if I put myself in the shoes of someone who's just installed the game, never played it before, I remember going back to my early days, 500,000 silver felt like, oh my god, how am I ever going to earn that much? And I can only if I put myself in, you know, Mr. Wargaming's shoes, I think the only reason to make a crew 500,000 silver and justify it is because you want someone to spend a bit of money converting their gold to silver, because it's a free-to-play game.
That's quite possible. Quite a possible justification for it. I just think, because it's a weird one, right? Because they made everything with the commanders so cheap, except for having the commander. Because you know, beforehand you couldn't change the nation of a commander like that. Once you had a commander in that nation, they were locked to that nation. Changing the commander from one tank to another again went with the 75%, 50%, 100% mentality. So if you wanted to go from, take the new Czech line that's come out, you wanted to go from the TNH VZ51 to the VZ55, it'd cost you 1,000 gold if you wanted that fully trained crew back into the next tank, or 100,000 silver for it to be 75% trained, but then you'd have to go for the rigmarole of getting it back up to 100% again. Whereas now it costs 60 gold to change nation with it, or like, is it 9,000 silver?
9,000 silver to change a nation, and it's 9,000 silver and 60 gold to change between World War II and Cold War.
Even that, I think it is. I think it's 60 gold to go. Say if you want to.
No, no, sorry, you're right. Yeah,
American.
Eastern to Western lines is 60 gold. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So like that, if you were used to the old commander system, that is obscenely cheap. You know, and if you were lucky enough to play the game and have a lot of commanders, you never really have to crew train another commander again, unless you want one specifically for every tank, so you never accidentally take a tank out without a crew.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I mean, after 6.0, I ended up with about 230 or 249 skill crews, something like that. So it is legitimately like, if I just want to play a tank, I can just go, oh, you know what, I need to find a 9 skill crew. This one fits the tank, look. 9,000 silver, done. Easy.
Yeah,
and that is one of the good things about it. That is one because it just makes it more accessible for your crews and stuff. You don't have to suffer through bad crews. You can go, okay, I want to play this tank. I want to grind this tank. I can take one of my better crews, slap it in a tank or a line, and just move up with it.
I do think though that it has removed the. Just if I rewind in my head a few years, I remember getting the T100 LT. I had my light tank crew for that tank, and it's like you develop a fondness for that particular crew in that particular tank because you've worked so hard to level them up in that vehicle, and they almost felt special to you as a player because you've tailored this crew for this vehicle and you've tailored that one for that vehicle and you've worked. It sounds weird, but it's like I know it's a video game. It's not a real crew, but it's like you worked with that crew to get them to where they are. 6.0 came along and it's just that's all gone out the window. That crew can just chop and change anywhere they want, and that special uniqueness of the crew system was lost.
Yeah, there was.
I don't know if that makes sense.
When I got the IS4, I just put a 1 skill crew in it because I always used to do it when I got a tier 10. I'd just put a fresh crew in it essentially, and then work it up because I always enjoyed playing the tier 9 and always think I want to keep going with the tier 9. I enjoy this. Yeah. So I'd keep the crew in that, and then just work up the crew with the premiums and playing tanks and stuff like that. I ended up getting a user-generated crew that was not user-generated, a random generated crew that was Vasily Zaitsev, and I was like, oh yes, the Soviet sniper of Russia.
Was it?
And it's like, come on, some work to be really good. In my IS4, and you're like, okay, I'm going to take Vasily out. He's going to love it and stuff like that. So you do get that fondness for the crews. I mean, don't get me wrong, it does mean that you spend all that time working it up, and then you become really fond of it. You have it in sort of your premiums and stuff, but then you also have it in that one tank, and it is good for that one tank.
Yes.
But at the same time, sometimes it's nice to like, you know what? I like you, Vasily. You can come with me and play whatever tank I want to play, There is that to it as well. I do miss the old crew system in the fact that I could make the crew whatever I wanted it to be as well, though, with the skills. Because now I feel very limited with my skills. It's going to be... There's always 6 skills I'm going to take, no matter what tank I'm playing. It's like, because you're always going to take Born Leader, you're always going to take Rapid Reload, Sixth Sense, Situational Awareness, Trap Mechanic, or General Mechanic, whichever one you want to pick.
Mm-hmm.
And Steady Aim. I'm always going to take those 6 skills because I want my tank to be 10% better through Born Leader. I want my reload to be 10% better no matter what. I want to know when I'm spotted. I want to make my view range always better. I want to make my tank be able to, don't get me wrong, we've got reusable repair kits, so sometimes Trap Mechanic, you can think, maybe I could drop it, but you might get tracked, burn your repair kit, and then you get tracked immediately after, which happens a lot.
It does.
And then it just gets tracked back on quickly. And then again, you want to be 10% more accurate, always. So, like, those 6 skills are always going to be used. And then that means, like, I've got 3 skills to be customizable with. So whether I've got a tank that's a bit derpy, I'll use all the gun skill, all the gun skills and stuff, or the tank's slow, I want to offer a drive in to make it, like, to have better terrain resistance to help it get to that top speed. Or it's got camo problems, or should I say it's got really good camo and I want to make that camo better, but also the gun's derpy, so it's like, so I've got to sacrifice the gun perks to enhance my camo, or I've got to sacrifice... Beforehand, it was like, okay, this tank needs help with its gun, so I can have the gun skills, but also it's built for camo, so I can have the camo skills as well. If I put enough work into this crew, I can have that. Whereas now it's just limited. Again, it's customizability, but obviously the crew skills as well are like so much more powerful than they were.
Yes.
Like every tank is just crazy when you get the right skills on it.
Yeah, that an idea that came up again. This was Slap came up with this idea, and this is something that we discussed it, and it's something that's in other video. I remember it was in like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 back in, was that 2009, 2010. When you maxed out your character, you could enter the prestige mode, which meant you did everything again, but you had the prestige mode, and the idea was you get your 9 skills, enter this promotion phase for your crew. You'd have to grind your 9 skills again, but you got a 10th slot, and you could do it again and get an 11th slot and then a 12th slot, and that would be a way of not only progressing your crews like we used to be able to do, but it would also provide players with an incentive to carry on playing once they hit the 9.
Yeah.
I think that would be a fantastic idea.
I definitely like that idea, because there's also a lot of crew skills in there that you think, oh, that might be nice, but at the same time, I'm never going to pick it. Because
yeah. Well, that was what was nice about the old crew system, and I remember this, because I bought... When I started playing, I was at tier 5, and for the life of me, I could not kill the Bogatyr. I just couldn't. Yeah. At that point in time, that was the tank that I thought, I can't kill this thing, so I thought, all right, I'll buy one. And I got the unique Bogatyr crew, which had a special skill on it that no other crew could get. And that was an incentive right there. Think, all right, this crew has got something that no other crew will ever have. So I will train this crew, and I'll make it my crew. But now, I think it's the skill that's got the hammer on it.
Yes, it's Iron Mace. It's Iron Mace.
Iron Mace. Is it like penetration doesn't drop over range or something?
Yeah, it's like 20 or 25%.
Yeah.
Decrease to the penetration drop over range.
That skill is now available for everybody.
Yeah, it's the same with the Snakebite crew as well. I can't remember what his name is, but there was the Simon Lynette. Yeah, Simon Lynette. That Snakebite crew was one that a lot of people would get, and there was ways of getting it as well through like the key cards or war chests. But then like you get the special war chest, and then you'd be able to get a chance of having a Bogatyr or a Simon Lynette skill, or there was it Carl Craft as well?
Yes.
And a lot of people would get those because they'd want multiple Simon Lynette crews, because the Snakebite skill, having the better accuracy on the move, was really nice for the British tanks, having them for like the British mediums and stuff like that, or the British light tanks. And you'd be like, yes, okay, so I've got more accuracy on the move, which is, a skill that no other nation can have. I'm going to train this special crew up to be really good, because it's going to be really useful for me to have in every other tank, better than any of the other crews that I have. And then obviously 6.0 comes along, and Simon Lynette becomes pointless, because you've got run and gun now, which it's basically what the Snakebite... Well, it's the Snakebite perk, but on steroids. I think the Snakebite perk was something like 3% better accuracy on the move, whereas now we've got run and gun, which is 10%. Which is insane, generally. Yeah,
the ability to RBRT people from across the map is, especially in Era 3, is insane.
Yeah, I'd say I know from doing testing and stuff like that with Era 3. I've not got to Era 3 myself. I played Cold War a little bit here and there, but I know that the accuracy on stuff like the M1s and Challengers is insane. And if you wanted to, and you had especially if you had the crew set up and the changes to vert stabs, which made it, instead of just increasing your accuracy when turning the turret and the tank by 20%, it's just a flat outright 20% buff to your accuracy. You can just basically travel around at 70 kilometers an hour and hit every shot. Penning's different, but you can hit every shot you'd fire if you wanted to.
Almost like that, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
and it is it's one of the things that I've always had I've got more used to it now, so it frustrates me a lot less. But it was always frustrating, especially after 6.0, where gun accuracy didn't really mean much. You'd have, because before 6.0, defenders, take defender. I always use the defender as an example because it's 0.47 accuracy and it's horrific.
Yeah.
Before 6.0, that thing would travel at 400 meters and it'd RBRT you. It'd probably hit you 1 out of 20 shots on the move. After 6.0, it was more like it was hitting you 6 out of 10. It would just aim at you and hit you on the move. Because why not? And there was a lot of... and then you obviously get more and more accurate tanks that are doing it all the time. And you couldn't poke. So you'd think, oh, I'm going to take a risky shot here. I'm going to poke over this ridgeline, pop a shot at someone and pull back. And if you were in the pre-6.0 mindset or PC World of Tanks or whatever, more than likely, if they're 300 meters away and they lock onto you, most of the time they're going to miss. You might get unlucky that they're going to hit you, but most of the time they're going to miss. Whereas now, you're pretty much taking the chance that they're going to hit you every time. You've always got to be prepared. It's just going to hit me.
Right.
Sort of that risky ability to take a shot at a tank that's moving across the open at 400 meters is higher risk now because, like I say, they're just going to hit you because the accuracy is insane that we've got now. Because beforehand, it was like, okay, I've got vert stabs, which makes me more accurate. Like I say, when on movement and turning the turret, I've got Brothers in Arms. It was back then, which will make me slightly better. I've got vents, which will make me slightly more accurate, but that's it. Now we've got stuff like steady aim, which makes me 10% more accurate completely. Snapshot, which will make me more accurate by 12% while turning the turret. And then run and gun, which makes me 10% more accurate on the move as well. And then also vert stabs, which is now just a flat out 20% better accuracy. So at the end of the day, you're talking probably like something more like 40% more accurate on the move. If you add just run and gun, steady aim, and vert stabs together, which is kind of insane. And it was one of my big pet peeves, and it still is a little bit, when you've got really extremely derpy tanks and they just laugh at you, essentially.
Yeah,
drive along, go bang, got you.
Yeah, when the dreadnought can just annihilate you at full speed, it's like, really?
Yeah, you're like, oh, thanks, game.
It's like, yeah, GG.
It's always the risk now, but
yeah,
you get used to it eventually, don't you?
You do, and I can't help but think that a lot of these changes have been brought in to try and entice new players to stay for longer, because if you're playing a Russian heavy and you're brand new to the game and you don't fully understand the aiming mechanics, you don't understand what equipment you should and shouldn't use, you don't understand crew skills, all of this detailed stuff of the game, if you pull the trigger and your shot is always missing, even though you feel like you're aiming it correctly, if you're missing, you're just going to think, oh, forget this, uninstall.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's good. I guess it's a good move for keeping new players, but it has the downside of, well, now that everything is really accurate,
I think it's more at the detriment of lightly armoured tanks than more heavily armoured, because the ones that are going to suffer the most are the lightly armoured tanks, not just light tanks, but say Leopard ones.
Yeah.
You know, where they've got no armour, they've got no armour to rely on. Their sole purpose was having good DPM and an absolutely fantastic gun, because the Leopard 1 gun, especially before 6.0, was like, I will never miss a shot for you. Maybe the odd time I will hit the ground because RNG, but most of the time I will hit every shot you ever want to take.
Yes.
And you will love me for it. And now there's obviously a lot more tanks that have 0.4 accuracy and have some sort of armor that you think, why would I take the Leopard? Because I could just take this, hit the same amount of shots because the gun is just as good, and I can bounce shots. You know, I don't suffer as much from having people just RBLT and run around like a lunatic.
Yeah. So
it's definitely one of those things that hurts the lightly armored tanks like that, unfortunately.
Yeah, it does. I haven't played World War II for quite a long time now, so I wouldn't claim to be in touch with everything on that side of the game. But it does seem like the tanks like the Leopard PTA, the Leopard 1, have taken a hit unnecessarily. Because they're also quite popular tanks, aren't they? I mean, they're very famous.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, number one, obviously, they're really popular because, like I say, they are famous. They're sort of tanks that people go, oh, Leopards, you know. Yeah. They're still very good tanks. I mean, one of the things is that they are really stealthy, and obviously having the camo net change as well, where it's always active, is filthy for those tanks. Because of the accuracy skills and stuff like that, you don't you don't need to take vert stabs on them. You can drop the vert stabs and put camo net on them, and you will still be just as accurate as you were. Well, to be fair, you're even more accurate than you were pre 6.0, even without the vert stabs. And then you can put the camo net on it, have some of the camo skills, and you are pretty darn stealthy. And that's a real big strength for you. And it just means that you end up playing a little bit further back than you might have done before, and you just try not to be spotted half the time. And you can play it that way, where you very rarely be spotted, and then therefore you can get good shots at people farm away, and you'll be better off than when you were before. But so it's kind of one of those things. They've kind of been nerfed in that sort of way where they'll be hit all the time, no matter what. Like, people will just, if you get spotted and you sort of, not in the open, but like, you know, you're just in a position where you can get shot, they will probably hit you. But at the same time, you can also you can make the tank just way more stealthy than it ever was and not get spotted. So it's sort of a double-sided coin or whatever.
Yeah, I understand. So we've talking about, you know, concealment and visibility. We've touched on Cold War and World War II. I did, prior to this, I did a little bit of research. I flicked through your channel, and I saw that you are primarily World War II based.
Yes, pretty much.
And I know the community. Well, I mean, I'm not exposed to it as much based on the fact that I primarily play Cold War. So anyone subbing to me, watching me, is going to be a fan of Cold War. But I know there are areas of the community that are very divided on this. What's your take on the Cold War mode? Are you totally against it, totally for it, or just a bit meh on the whole thing?
It's more just a bit meh on it, really, to be honest. Because I mean, it can be fun. Like, certain areas of that game can be fun. I've played probably 100 odd battles in Era 1. I've played a fair few in Era 2 because of all the free premiums you get.
Yeah.
Because, you know,
it's popular.
It's
the tier 8
out
of Cold War.
All of the premiums. Yeah. And you know, it can be fun. You can have fun games in it. There's just certain things about it that sometimes I'll end up playing it for a couple of battles, and I'm kind of like, I'm a bit bored of this now. I'm going to go switch back to doing what I'd normally do, right? There's little things that irk me, and little things that are like, this is all right, you know. One of the things about Cold War that still is kind of annoying, and I suppose it's something, again, you probably get used to if you played it more and more, and it's the difference between playing World War II and Cold War, is the RNG in itself, like the damage numbers.
Okay. Yep.
When you look at, it's one of those things that was always annoying about World War II when they brought in 6.0 and then they changed it, and it was like, oh, thank God. We've gone back to balanced numbers where I know that it's telling me my alpha is 560, and I know I'm going to hit somewhere around between 500 and 600 consistently. Whereas with Cold War, when I was playing the M46A1, for example, I had 240 alpha, but I was consistently rolling for like 150, 160. Or just around below 200, you know, and I'd never, when you get that 240 roll, you're like, oh, that's nice. And it's like, oh, that should have been what I had anyway. So I never understand why, it's the same with the RNG when they had it you know, just after 6.0. It never understood why they didn't just show what your actual alpha is. Because you're always going to have an average somewhere, like, no matter what their numbers are for the RNG, you're going to have an average number, what you're more likely to roll than any other. So it's kind of like, why don't you reflect that in the UI?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So if I'm understanding you correctly, the RNG percentage plus and minus isn't shown in the garage stats, because the only garage stat you see is, you know, you've got, I don't know, 200 mil of pen, 200 alpha. So when you take the tank out, that's what you're expecting consistently, and you're not getting that. That's what irks you.
That's one thing that's annoying, and I'd say that's one thing that was really annoying when they brought it in after 6.0 in World War II as well, and to the point where people complained so much that they changed it back. And it's kind of a bit odd that they never did that with Cold War. It's one of those things, because the more you bring parity between two modes of the same game, like just little things like that, it's going to be better for the player base overall. Because I think with Cold War, when you think about the game mode, obviously True Vision suits Cold War really well. Like that, the mode's kind of built around it, and it works well with it. It does. But the problem with that is that, especially when you're putting newer players into it, and they're playing Cold War, and they get used to True Vision, they get used to playing the game like that, and then they play World War II and they can't see things, they're like, what's going on? I can't see that. And then they play 2 or 3 games of World War II and they'll probably go, you know what, I'm going back to Cold War. And then they'll stay there, essentially.
Yeah.
It doesn't help the playability of one mode for the other, because as well as that, people might play World War II, get used to the World War II mode, and then go to Cold War, and then get annoyed with the RNG, and then well, you don't really get annoyed with the True Vision. I think True Vision makes the game very, very easy, because you can see everyone, everywhere, at all times, essentially. And
yep.
I can see why they did True Vision, because if we're really honest, as much as I'm not the biggest fan of it, because I like the camo system, I like the you know that if you have the max view range, if you look at the tank and you're trying to find a Vanguard, for example, and you're in a tank with pretty decent view range, you know that you're gonna have to get close to that thing to spot it. It's gonna be annoying that it can just sit in that bush and not be seen, but the thing is, you know that that's the design of the tank, right? And if you get used to the camo values and the view ranges and stuff, you know how best to play it and how best you can go and basically use it to your advantage and stuff like that. But I can see why they wanted to do True Vision, because it does make sense.
Yeah.
It does. It makes sense. And for a newer player coming into the game, disappearing and reappearing tanks is obviously something they're going, what?
Yeah, the intuitive nature of the True Vision system does lend itself to a sense of ease when you're new to the game.
Yes.
And I I put a slightly provocative video up about a week ago. I said World War II sucks.
Yes, I had a ganders of that one.
Yeah, so that poked the hornet's nest slightly, which I did intend to do. And I've played Cold War for so long now that my tactical mindset in that video, my tactical mindset for resetting a cap isn't to use my view range to outplay the player. It's to use my map positioning to outplay the people capping. Like, I won't rely on my view range to protect me and just drive straight up through the open desert and rely on my view range to spot them and they not spot me. I'm going to play the ridge lines, I'm going to play the cover, and I'm going to peek the cover to see the cap circle, take my shot and disappear, relocate. It's the kind of, I guess I'm bringing I played Battlefield 4 a lot, so I'm bringing the mindset of peek this hill as a sniper, take the shot, don't peek the same spot twice because they'll be waiting for that, relocate, shoot somewhere else. But you can always see the target. And I jumped back into World War II, and it really irritated me in that particular game because I knew
you didn't get into position to see them, to shoot them.
But it's not like, oh, I couldn't get into position. It was, I know I'm in position to see them, I just can't see them because reasons.
Yeah.
And for me, it's I can. The good thing about these conversations is it does develop, helps with perspective and stuff, and I can understand that for some players they enjoy the number crunching of every vehicle. They enjoy this vehicle has this stat, this vehicle's got that stat, that's why you couldn't see them, this is why you could see them, and outspot this but you can't outspot that. I understand that there's that kind of I don't know what to call it, it's almost like you're playing a board game where you've got all these,
Yeah,
these
it's kind of fairly
tactical
in a way.
It's not like no,
Yeah.
it's not chess, is it?
Well,
It's not like chess.
no.
It's a more, I want to say Dungeons and Dragons, but it's not really, is it? It's that kind of desktop tactical warfare, knowing what you can and can't do kind of approach to a game.
Yeah.
And if you like that, then I understand that it's perfect for you and you'll have no problems with it. I think the mindset that I have, though, is that this is I want to play it like it's a a regular shooter where if you're there, I can see you, and if you don't want me to shoot you, don't stand there.
Yeah.
And
I think that's where the game is different to a lot of others, because it's not an FPS shooter, for example.
No.
It's an arcade armored fighting vehicle game. Like, it's like War Thunder, for example. It's in a similar vein to the War Thunder arcade battles, right? It's an arcade game where you go in, it's got certain mechanics, and that's how it works. Like, you fight with those mechanics, and you don't always see the target in front of you. You have to use the certain mathematics involved, whatever they are, you know, and work it to your advantage to be able to play that. It is an arcade game at heart. It has those sorts of things to it and little nuances to get used to play it.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, it's not a simulator game. It's not a well, I'd say True Vision is more of the simulation than anything, but it's not a simulating game where, like realistic battles, where it's just like you see them, they're always there, you can see the tank, you can shoot it no matter what. I think that's the difference between what tanks has always been and what what other games are. And I think that's definitely it's definitely a learning curve. The learning curve in tanks is insane. Like,
yes,
if you're a new
it
player,
is. Yeah.
If you're a new player coming into this game, it is a confusing mess. I think most people, when they come into the game, and most people that stick with it have an interest in tanks in the first place.
Yeah.
Like, they'll be like, oh, that's an M4 shit. Like, for me, it was. I remember playing it. I remember playing this game back when it was 360, and I downloaded it, thought it looked crap, didn't understand why tanks disappeared on me, and was like, you know what? Because at that point, that was it. My Xbox 360 had red ringed, and the disc tray didn't work. That was the red ring. So I had to go for free-to-play games to download and play. So obviously this was, I think at that point, it was literally in beta, open beta. So I was like, oh, you know what? Tanks sound cool. I'll play tanks. Like, I already enjoy it. I'd been to the tank museum like twice at that point anyway, so I knew tanks anyway.
Yeah.
And it was like, yeah, go on then. Let's have a go. And then played, obviously, like I say, you'd have the whole tanks disappearing, getting blown up all the time. Like, the game graphics back on 360 days weren't that great. And it's like, oh, no, this isn't the one. And then they eventually did the Xbox One beta, and the game looked so much better in the not UHD, the 108OP and stuff on the Xbox One. It was great, and it was like, oh, the M4 Sherman, I want that tank. I've seen that tank run around. It looks so cool. I want it, Yeah. And so you go, okay, how do I get to the M4 Sherman? Well, I've got to go through this tank, that tank, that tank. Right, okay, I've got to play these tanks. Okay, let's get to the M4 Sherman. Play it and be thoroughly disappointed because you blow up all the time. But
you got no armor.
Yeah, but you've got the drive because you go, oh, that's a cool tank. And then for me, it was, I got the M4 Sherman, played the M4 Sherman a hell of a lot, then realised there was the Jumbo Sherman. It was just a Sherman but with armour, and it's like, yes, this is cool, this is what I want. Get to the Jumbo Sherman, play the Jumbo Sherman, enjoy that, and then look at all the tech trees and go, oh, there's a Tiger tank, look, oh, let's go for the Tiger, etc, etc. And that's how people get into the game. But for the more casual players that don't really have too much of an interest in actual tanks themselves, just sort of are looking at free-to-play games and go, oh, this is a top-rated free-to-play game. Although I know that it's not in that zone anymore on the Xbox Store, for example. But it used to be. That's how I found it was in the top rated section. It's like, hey, if you want free to play games, this is where you go for it, and it was in there. And for those casuals that are looking for free to play games, they're gonna come and play it. Like I say, things are gonna disappear, and they're gonna get blown up all the time, and they're gonna go, do I want to invest time in this? Probably not. And that's probably, like I say, that's probably one of the biggest things that people had when playing the game was the vision system. Brand new players that left anyway.
Yeah,
and True Vision makes sense for them to do it, to bring people in. And I suppose, as much as it does have a detriment on gameplay in one mode, from one mode to the other, because people will expect that vision system, and it just doesn't work like that in like World War II. And it does create issues where sometimes people will be doing stuff because they expect, like you say with the cat sit scenario, where people are so used to certain things that they'll start to do it in the other mode, and it doesn't work at all, and they end up getting blown up, and it sort of starts to hurt the gameplay in one mode than the other. But the other swing to that is if more people start playing the game and get into it because of this, then they might switch modes, and they might like World War II, and they might start playing it again, and they might stick around.
Yeah.
So there is both of those things to it. But I think the problem with Cold War, and you say people are obviously really against it, well, people have played it a lot and then they're for it, and then there's people that are a bit like, like me, like I will have a little foray into it, I'll play it in a bit, but I'll play it a little bit here and there, and then get a bit bored, and then go back to what I was doing,
Yeah.
I think it's just one of those things. I think they brought it in at a very divisive time, and a lot of people probably see it as the case in point of why they did 6.0. They look at it and go, well, they made the UI really advanced, they changed all this and that, and then like 3 months later they brought in Cold War, and it's like, well, clearly there's some correlation here, and then people are naturally, or they're already peed off with you, and then you bring this new whole fantastic thing, and then it's got True Vision in it, which again was a very, very divisive topic before 6.0 when they did the original tests, and add all that together and people go, no, sorry mate, I ain't looking at that.
I think one of the most I'll use the word passionate. I think one of the most passionate sentiments towards Cold War towards Cold War and against it at the same time, is that what you've just said there is it was brought in at a very divisive time, and to a lot of let's say the majority of players, they said, first of all, why have you released update 6.0 like this? And why are you spending time working on another game mode when the main game mode is in such a bad state? And it's the point of view of stop wasting dev time on this new game mode and get the core game fixed.
Yeah.
Now that's not. It doesn't mean that Cold War is bad or anything like that. It just means that the resources available are split, and the point being, don't split what you've got. Just get one bit working first, and then add to it. And as you say, it came at a divisive time, so I think there's a lot of the boat was, and I know the phrase is, you rock the boat. I think the boat almost capsized in this case, and the ripples from that are still there. They haven't quite, the dust hasn't settled yet.
It's like if they brought it in before 6.0 and before they did all the weird and wonderful changes, they probably would have had a mode that was popular between both modes. potentially they've had two modes that are pretty popular. Because I think Cold War could be a good mode. The balancing is another issue because there's. I mean, it happens in World War II as well. Let's be real, but there's certain things like they will bring in a tank like the Armadillo, or they'll bring in a tank like the FV4211, which is just so unbelievably strong. And because obviously they gave it away for free, it's everywhere. And then that hurts a certain part of the game quite a lot. And
it does, yeah. Well, it
had
had
another issue in that regard.
At the moment, with the current season being what it is, with the Leopard 1A1 as the reward, I have in recent weeks, actually no, this week I will say, I have seen a decline in the FV numbers.
Yeah.
Which is quite nice because for me, I love playing the light tanks, especially the BMP2. And if you come up against an FV, you in the back of my head, I do think the only way I can pen this guy is from the rear. Yeah. My missile will not do anything to his front or side. My 30mm autocannon can only get him from the back, and if I can't engineer that situation, that's a target I can't do anything against. So when you've got like 6 or 7 on a team, I do look at it at the start and think, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah. So when I know when they released the 4211, it was like obviously most of the games were just 4211.
Yes, they were.
Number one, that doesn't help the fact that the game that sort of the game Cold War and that sort of era is so depopulated in terms of what tanks are available to play, because the amount of lines there are. I think that's one thing that turned people off as well, apart from the whole regrinding tanks they already have, etc., etc. There's only 2 lines. Now there's 3, soon to be 4, etc. There's not much choice. When you're playing it, it was just, hey, look, I'm playing an M46 against about 100 other M46s, or I'm playing against T44s, and that's all we're playing against.
Yeah,
and that's it.
At first, I got to the M48, and I stopped playing Cold War because all you had, you're right, you had the Russian line, and you had the American line. It was just those 2 linear lines. There were no branches at all. And in my head, I thought, well, I've got to the top of Era 1. Era 2 is just going to be the same as Era 1, and Era 3 is going to be the same as Era 2 and Era 1. So at this point, I'm going to stop. I can't be bothered. And I did go back to World War 2 for a while, because Cold War to me just had no variation. And then
it's just a bit samey.
Yeah. And then the American lights came out, and the Russian lights came out, and then that for me was like, okay, now we've got some variation. And obviously since then, the games are a lot more varied now than they ever used to be. So every update, every season, for me, the game mode is getting better and better and better, because you're getting all this variation. And we've got the German line coming out in a couple of weeks, and I honestly, I've never been so excited for a line to come to the game ever.
I mean, leopards are cool, so
they are. They're very.
There you go.
Very cool.
Everyone's gonna be excited for that.
I saw one. They took one out I went to Tiger Day a couple of weeks ago, and there was a leopard there. The sound of that thing is unreal.
It roars past. It's like, sounds awesome.
You can feel it in your chest. It's incredible.
Yeah. It's like when they're running the M103s round and the M60 round last time I went to Tank Fest, which was like 2018 or something like that. It's just like, whoof. You feel the tingles as it zooms past. As your hair's blowing off your head. It's pretty cool. And they are really cool to see in the flesh, and you see them running around, and that sort of excitement for seeing those sorts of tanks like that makes you go, oh, I can't wait to see it in game. That's going to be awesome.
That's it. And I think I've mentioned this before on a different video, but seeing the tanks in person is one thing, because in the game we see these pixels on the screen every day almost, and you get in your head an idea of, okay, that's how big that is.
Yeah.
And I saw Tiger 1, obviously, I saw that, 131, and I thought, yeah, this is big. This is not small.
Yeah.
But the one that really shocked me was the KV1.
Oh yeah, KV1's absolutely
It's
massive.
absolutely huge. I couldn't believe it. I thought KV1 would be similar to, a Tiger or a Sherman. No, it's
Nope, not at all.
it's
No,
like
it's
twice the
absolutely huge.
length.
I know, it's mad.
It's a city block on tracks.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah.
And you think like I'm 6'2", nearly 6'3", and it's like standing next to him, like having to look up, like, oh my god, this thing's huge.
Yeah.
Like, what is? I didn't expect this to be so big.
They're magnificent machines, and after coming back from that event, I've come back to the game, and I just love tanks, and I'm here for the tanks. I love playing them, and I'm here for as much discussion as I can get, and my hope is that we can kind of stabilize, make an attempt to stabilize the community somewhat, in that getting different opinions out there, getting different ideas out there, because we are, well, I hope anyway, we are all here because we love tanks, and I'm not gonna tell anyone that their opinion is right or wrong. Everyone's got their thoughts, everyone's got their pros and cons to everything, and I think if we can,
but it's the whole idea of beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? Like,
true, yeah.
One thing is ugly to one person, but it's like music, right? Music is one of those things I always put it down to. Some people will go,
Yes.
oh god,
Yeah.
that music is terrible, but then you'll have like the thousands of people that go, I love this music, right? Just because you think it's terrible doesn't mean that other people think it isn't, or is, whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
And
some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it. It's the way it is, and some people are going to be like, I'm not that interested. But
yeah,
it is what it is, and it's one of those things. I mean, it's human nature, really, at the end of the day. People take that sort of strong opinion point on whatever the position of something is. And it's just like, well, if they like it, they like it. Cool. Let them carry on, I like this over here. I'll stay here. I'm not going to get involved with what they're doing.
Yeah.
Don't want to stick my oar in.
Exactly. And on the music analogy, it's a few years ago now. I'm probably going to show my age a little bit, or my education with music here. But popularity is not a good gauge for quality.
No.
Because if it were, we'd all be listening to Justin Bieber, and that's me showing my age, because I don't even know if he still sings.
Pop music, that's pop music, isn't it? Pop music is you only have to look at what pop music was in the 80s to what pop music is in the 2000s, the 2010s.
Yeah.
The how different they are.
It's vast, massive change.
It's crazy, and it's exactly the same with anything. Popularity is just a gauge of what people like at the time.
Yes.
But doesn't mean it's going to last forever.
That is true. That is true. All right, dude. Well, this is the longest episode I've had so far. We've been going for over an hour.
Really? What?
Yeah.
Oh my
goodness.
Yeah.
The timer there says an hour and 5 minutes, but I don't think the video will be that long. A couple of minutes short of that. But this has been an excellent conversation, and I say this, well, so far, every sort of episode has ended with, we need to do this again.
Yes,
and
definitely.
Bring up as many other topics as we can, because I think one thing, maybe we'll save this for next time, but we didn't discuss MOE changes.
Yes, we didn't know.
Well, we could talk about it now. I don't know.
I don't mind. It's up to you, really.
Let's talk about MOE changes. Let's carry on. Now, the MOE stuff, my understanding of it at the moment is the system we have is accurate to exactly what your performance is. So if the MOE is telling you that you're on 85% 2 marked, you are literally on the 85%, whereas with the old system, if it was 85%, you were actually 90%. That's my understanding, or have I got that wrong?
It's the other way around. It was more like, if you're at 85, with the old system, it was more like if you're at 85%, you're actually at 80% or something like that. It was 5% less. So
So
when
that's
you
why
achieve a
everyone lost
second mark,
5.
technically you were at 80% on their mathematical calculations. And that's why when they did the changes, everyone ended up losing like the whole 5%, you know, and it really damaged everyone's mark. I mean, that was frustrating in itself because a lot of people, because they announced the 4 marks were going to be a thing, and so naturally, lots of people went, okay, I'm going to get to 100% and then be ready for when this change comes in and I can get my 100% 4th gold marks and stuff like that. And then they changed it, everyone dropped 5%, and then it also became
Okay.
astronomically harder as well. Like, for me, it's the give and take of the MOE system, right?
Yeah.
Like, you'd have, I'll take the Cranvarn when I 3-marked that 3 months ago, 4 months ago, possibly. I can't remember, one of the two. And when I did that, you're having 8,000 damage games, right? 8,000 damage, and you're like, this is great for a tier 10. I'm really happy. I'm going to see like a 0.7 increase or a 0.8 increase, and then you're going, wait, why have I only gained 0.3, 0.2? Like, what's happening
that's
here?
rough.
Yeah, and then you'd do 3.5, 4k damage, which is perfectly decent game for a tier 10, which is not going to be enough to get you a 3rd mark, but you're thinking, well, okay, I might lose a little bit here, but you know, and then you end up losing 0.3, and you're sitting there going, well, I couldn't have done any more in that game. I was just stuck with my reload, and the game ended in 4 minutes. And
Yes. Yep.
I did everything I could. I ended up getting 4k. I expect to drop because maybe the requirements is 5k, sure, but the fact is, it took me 4k. I lost 0.3, but to get that 0.3 back, I've then got to go and have an 8,000, 9,000 damage game, which doesn't come along all that often, realistically.
No, realistically.
More often than not, if you're going to be going for that third mark, you're going to be consistently trying to get 5, 6, 7,000, if that, and that's combined, not just doing the raw damage. And you might be achieving that, but then you're going to have those odd games where you just can't really do much, or you get one bombed by Artie, or etc., etc. Any multiple of factors that can go wrong in a game that we all know can happen, and you get punished so severely for it. But yet, when you have that really nice game, you don't gain much, and you sit there going, "Well, what's the point?" Like, for me beforehand, for me now, it's just more of a chore to do. And if I do get close to like 93, 94%, I might go and finish it off just because, why not? You know, it's there. It's not going to take me too long to do. But beforehand, it was like, okay, I'm at 91%. It's probably going to take me 7 or 8 games, getting a high consistent average in it to get to that 3rd mark position. Now it's more like, okay, the position I'm in, it's probably going to take me 20 or 30. Just even getting the same sort of really high averages. And it just becomes a frustration game at that point, because when it gets to the point where you are doing those high numbers, but you're not gaining very much, but then you have those games where, you know, it does go wrong, you're losing more than you'd gain in the extremely high numbers. And I think one of the games, and I always take the Cranvarn because that's the one I remember the most from doing it recently at tier 10.
Yeah.
I had I think the second to last game and the grind for it was 14k combined. I did like 9k, I think it was between 8 and 9k damage, and it was on Prokhorovka, so I went hull down on the mid-ridge, did 8 or 9k damage, and then did a load of spotting as well, because I was spotting it all. So I ended up getting a ton of assist, a ton of damage, and it's like 14, that's going to be like 2%, because that's like one of those games that's once in a tank generation thing type dealy.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, yes, and then you gain 1.1%, and you sit there going, I only gained 1% for 14k combined. And I know that if I was to play another game and then I played the next game and got one bomb by Artie, I'd probably lose more than 1%. And I'm like,
yeah,
give and take. Where you know, these ridiculous games. Like, I'm not saying obviously that you should be gaining 2-3% from games like that, but just the amount you seem to lose these days from having the more bang average games is incredible. And then to get that back, it's more than likely going to take you 3 or 4 games to get it back to where it was. And it's just a frustration game. Like I say, it is just frustrating now, more than anything. And I think it's something that was already slightly frustrating before and didn't need adding to.
Yeah, it was already a tough system.
Yeah, like, don't get me wrong, after 6.0 it definitely felt slightly easier, but that was purely because, well, everything got better. Essentially, you hit more shots. But like what they've tuned it to now it feels insane, to be honest. And I know when they're saying that you get the 100% mark, it's not true 100%, because if it was a true 100%, you would no one would get it. Like, that just wouldn't happen. Maybe one person might be able to get it, but once one person's got it, and if they keep doing that, no one's ever going to achieve it ever again, because the numbers needed would be just insane.
Yeah.
And I know that I think Mr. SPG in the Discord said it's more like the 100% is more around 98, 99%, something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah,
because it's a reflection on your performance based on other. What is it? It's a comparison of your performance in that tank against all other players in that tank for the past week, or was it 2 weeks?
It's 2 weeks, yeah, 14 days.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can understand Wargaming's logic, because if they're going to say to a player, you've hit 100%, then that player knows, I am, at this point in time, I've just hit the 4 mark, I am the best player in this tank in this game as of right now. I mean, that could change in a week's time, fine, but if it's not a true representation, you can't really walk away and say, I know I am the best in this tank for this week, because, you know, you've got that 5% cushion where you might have 10 or 20 other players that are in that area. So for them to make it as accurate as possible, I can understand that from a competitive point of view.
Yeah, I can understand why they'd want it to be as close as possible, so they're not sort of I don't know, kind of misleading or whatever. But it's
the frustration. I get the frustration aspect as well, though. Yeah.
If the system was like it was before, I mean, don't get me wrong, it might have been too easy, sure, if that's what they think, but like, it was something to achieve, it was something to work for, and you could get there, and you'd be a little bit frustrated, because obviously some games you would get one bombed and you'd lose a decent amount, but you could also, if you had a good game, you knew that you were getting a good percentage back, and it wasn't always necessarily just pure punishment, because that's what it feels like. It's just pure punishment every single time. Like, you have a really good game, you don't really gain much, but then you have a bad game, or a subpar game for the 3rd mark, and you lose more than you would have gained on that good mark.
Yeah.
Good game, I should say. And it's like, cool.
So the punishment for a bad game doesn't feel equal to the progression for a good game.
Yes, exactly that.
I mean, have felt that as well. Yes, I know what you mean.
Even because I get the whole point is it's supposed to be a thing where you're like, look at me, I got the 3rd mark, right? That's the whole point. Like, it's not supposed to be an easy task, but if they were to dial it down, like 2%, for example, in their calculations, it doesn't even need to be the whole 5% like it was back in the past. Even if they were to just dial it down by that 2%, it'd make it slightly more beneficial for good games. It would be a lot nicer to grind for, and I think a lot more people would probably go back to trying. Because, like, for me especially, like, I just stop bothering. Essentially,
yeah.
If I get close, I'll probably think, yeah, go on then, I'll go for it. But for the most part, I just go, I can't be bothered. It's just too much time. The other thing we have with it, though, and it's something that's only ever, it definitely happened beforehand, but it seems to be more prevalent now, is that when you grind a tank, you might play 2 or 3 days in a row, play that tank, you end up doing 30 battles in it, and you go from 89% to 93, and you think, right, I'm going to put it down, and the next time you come back, you can't play till 5, 6, 7 days later. You come back, play the tank, and randomly you've dropped 3-4% again. And you sit there going, what? How have I done that? It took me like 3 days to get back, to get to that position.
And that is exactly what I've experienced with the BMP2. I 3-marked the BMP2, and I thought, and I probably did what most players do, which was, right, I've 3-marked my precious. I'm not going to touch it because I know how easily you can lose it. So I thought, I'm just going to leave it on 95 point 0.05 or 0.6%, whatever it was. You'd gone over. I thought, right, I'm going to leave my precious there.
Yeah.
And I went back to it, and I played a game. I did about 8,000 combined, which is more than enough for a 3 mark. Got to the end game stats, and it went, here's your 2 mark. And I thought, what? I'm back down at 93.8%. I think I might be on 93.88% now. I'm trying to get it back up.
Yeah.
But yeah, there you go. That's an example of how you get it there, and the bar is always changing. It's not set.
Oh, that is one of those things. The bar is always changing. It's like if you put the tank down, you don't come back to it for a month, you can expect it's probably, sometimes it'll have gone up. I mean, it doesn't seem to happen these days, but it happened a lot before the change, where you come back and sometimes the market have actually gone up, and you'd be like, oh, I've gained like 2%, 3%. It's weird. Okay, I'll take it. But then sometimes you'd lose 2 or 3% because more people might have played the tank. It might have just got a little bit harder, etc., etc. And then you lost a little bit, and you're like, well, okay, I'll put it down for a month. That's fair enough. But like now, it is literally like you put it down, come back after a weekly reset, or come back 2 or 3 days later, and it's just changed, and you're like, oh, cool. So the time I put in was kind of wasted, and I've now got to put more time into it again that I don't necessarily have to do, and it just becomes more of a grind that you just feel a little bit disappointed with. There is extreme examples as well, though, which I had with the Liberté. I don't know what they do sometimes with these things. I played the Liberté, which is the FCM 50T skinned.
Yes.
And it was what they buffed it a wee while ago, and they gave it more frontal armor, etc., etc. And I didn't play it for. I played it about 3 or 4 months later, and I ended up playing a load of games in it. And I hadn't played it too much before, and was like, "Wow, this tank's pretty damn awesome," because it is a absolutely awesome tank. Played it to the 2nd mark, got it to 90%, and was like, you know what? I could 3 mark this. This has been a fun grind. This tank's fun, and it's it's going up a little bit here and there. I could come back to this at some point. I'm at 90%.
Yeah.
I did put it down for about a month at that point, and I didn't touch it again. And then I came back and I was at 76%. And I'm sat there going,
wow.
It's like the jaw hitting the floor moment going, excuse me? Like,
good grief.
What's happened? Like, the buffs were like 4 months ago. It's not, there's nothing that's really changed the popularity of the tank too much. So how has that changed?
Did you make a video on it?
14%. I made a video on it. Actually, I think I made a video on it like in the week I did it, but I was playing it for that month after.
I was gonna say, there you go. You shot yourself in the foot.
Yeah. Yeah, fully. And it dropped 14%. And I'm sitting there going, how is that even possible? Like, has it really changed that much, that significantly, for me to drop from 90% to 76%? And this is after doing 4k damage in it, which is obviously really good for a tier 8 for the most part. And you're sitting there going, I don't understand how we've gone from that to that. Sure, I put it down for a month.
Yeah. And
I've come back and I'm like, yeah, okay, it's time to play it. But then I'm thinking, right, I'm feeling the FCM 50T, I'm feeling the Liberté. I want to play this tank a fair bit. I want to get that 3rd mark, because that'd be really cool, because the red marks on that tank look really cool. And I'm like, yeah, go on then, I'll do it. And then you play it, you get 76%, and you're like, nah, I'm all right. I'll just go do something else.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I've experienced the opposite end of that, which is, this happened quite a lot immediately after the 6.0 update. There were many tanks that I hadn't marked at all, premiums mostly, and I would, playing 6.0, I thought, all right, I'm going to take this tank out, this tier 8, I'm going to take it out, play one battle, and it's like, hey, here's your 1 mark. I'm like, what? And it happened again and again. And I'm thinking, why am I suddenly 1 marking it? And that's just an example of the bar changes. It's a fluid goalpost.
Yeah.
It's always changing, and what I do like about the system though is that once you hit the 3 mark, even if you drop below it, you still keep your 3 marks, because
which is wonderful.
that would be even more demoralizing, I think, if they took
Yes,
it away
definitely.
from you.
And once you've achieved it, it's like an achievement for life. You know,
Yeah.
you've got it. You're like, thank goodness I got it. You know.
Yeah.
And it can always work like that. Obviously, popularity of tanks also changes the mark progression system on it, because the hammer, for example, obviously a tank that completely dropped out of popularity. People just didn't really play it at all at that point. You maybe see one or two in a battle every now and then.
Yeah.
But you generally wouldn't see it. And then they gave it away in the season pass, and tier 7 was full of them.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
and it changed from because last time I'd played it, I played it randomly and I was at like 94%. And after about however long it had been, it was like we were 20 days from the end of the season pass or something like that, or even 10 days. And I was thinking, you know what, I'll make a video on it, because I was looking at the season pass and I was like, actually, I've not made a video on the hammer I don't think I've ever made a video on the hammer. So I was like, you know what, go on then, I'll make a video on the hammer, because I like to do that when there's a free thing given away. I'll make a video on it so people can have a look at it, see what they might like to set it up with, see what you might be best putting crew skills on, well, just as a basis really, because it's always personalized to you. And I'll make a video on it. So okay, I'll play it, and I went from 94% to 99.5, and I was like, oh, all right, okay, that's cool. And then played 2 games and got the gold mark on it. But it's like the example of popularity of tanks changing the difficulty of it, in that the more popular a tank is, generally the more likely it is to drop. And the hammer was a good example of that, to be honest, in how it was actually fairly high, and then everyone got the tank, started playing it, and it dropped a lot.
Yes, so the more popular the vehicle, the harder it is to mark, is basically the takeaway from that.
Well, it depends on how, especially as well, it depends on how good the tank is. It's
True.
like...
And the quality of the play.
With the hammer, the more popular it was, the easier it was to do, because the hammers, well, like the Tigers are generally, they're a little bit harder to play right and consistently right, because they are just a big box. They've got a great gun, but they are a big box with no armor. And people will play more aggressive with them, and they will tend to get wrecked, because there's a lot of tanks that will just sap away all of your hit points. It doesn't matter how good your gun is, it doesn't matter how much DPM you have. If you've got no armor and you play it too aggressively, you're going to get destroyed. And hammer like that is, Tiger like that is going to be far easier to do.
I think the Tiger,
as opposed to a tank like, I don't know, the Fortress Ferdinand, which has absolutely no one play it except for maybe 1 or 2 people. And if that 1 or 2 people that play it are really good at the game and average really high, that mark is going to be so difficult, because there's only like 2 people average, affecting the actual position of the mark.
Right.
Whereas hammer goes from 2,000, 3,000 average battles in a month to 25, 30,000. The basis of the actual overall mark.
Oh, of course, yeah, because it's a comparison against everybody else that's playing it.
Yeah.
So if no one's playing, if only 2 people are playing it, you've got your mark has been compared to that one other person, and if they're also really, really good, you're going to have a really hard time.
Yeah, which is why when they say which is why they say that when they changed it, they were like, yeah. The reason it's got harder is because everybody's grinding the 4th mark. Everybody is going for the 100%. And that's why these tanks have got harder, because obviously everybody is playing it to the best of their ability and getting the best out of the tank. Therefore, it's getting harder. It doesn't really work that much when you think about that logic and you're thinking, well, why is this tank that basically no one plays even now exceptionally hard? Or like, it works for some tanks, don't get me wrong, the logic of people are trying to get the 4th mark, therefore it's really difficult. Like the CS63 is one of those, because I think Mr. SPG again said that I don't think anyone's actually gold marked it. I don't think anyone's 100% of the CS63, yeah. I could be wrong. It might have even been something like there's only 1 or 2 people have done it. But like the averages for that tank are utterly insane, and that is because every man in his dog, because number one, the tank is ridiculously good. It's a fantastic tank. It's got great mobility, good gun handling, great DPM. It just does everything well, and it's got the sort of armor that is you don't rely on it, but you ricochet the odd shot here and there. it's a really, really damn good tank, and it's what everyone loves to play, and everyone is trying to go for that 100%. Therefore, everyone is driving the mark up really high. I know people that have been playing it and then had like 10,000 damage and only got 0.1. And that's it. And then they're actually losing percentage for doing like 5k.
Oh, that's enough to make you put your controller down.
Yeah, exactly. That's how insane that tank is to mark, and that is partially because they've made it far harder, and partially because every man in this dog is trying to get that to that 100%, and that goes as far as people like trying to rig them in the best way that they can, which is like, you know, they'll platoon them. They can't do it anymore, but platoon themselves up with two, like light tanks is one case for that where people do it. I think the Manticore is one that people have done it with a lot, where it's really, really good at being stealthy. It's got no DPM, but it's exceptionally high to mark because people could platoon up with two artillery, and then they go and make an aggressive spot, stay on stealth, and then they know that those two artillery in their platoon will smash everything
they spot.
Yeah, and they'll end up doing like 8,000-9,000 spotting because, well, these two artillery behind them that they know are definitely going to shoot everything that they are going to spot, and they're going to get like 2k hits on people and stuff like that, you know. And that's the like length that people have to go to be able to get fourth marks on a lot of tanks, because they're just, with the natural progression of the way teams have been playing and stuff like that, and how quick games have been going, it's just too hard to do by yourself. Yeah. Like, there's no other way you're possibly going to be able to push it to that. But even doing that with the CS63, people haven't been able to do it.
And I suppose that it being difficult to do is exactly what Wargaming would want. They don't want every Joe Blow running around with the 3 gold rings. And that's perfectly acceptable. That's what you want from it. Because the whole point is it's supposed to be, look at me, I'm good enough to do this, etc., etc. Like, you know, wave your EP about. But there's a level to it, and at the minute it's just too darn hard, and it's just too much of a grind, essentially, that makes it just a chore to do, and you go, what's the point? So you want the old system to return just for ease of play?
Yeah, well, just to make it a little bit nicer to do. I mean, it doesn't even, like I say, it doesn't even have to be that whole 5%. Even if it was just 1 or 2% easier, it would still be too difficult for the majority of people. You'd still have to play well, but the give and the take would be a lot nicer. It would be a little bit kinder, and it wouldn't be, hey, look, I've just done 8k, 9k damage and gained 0.3, and oh, I've just had a 4-minute game where I couldn't do anything. I got one bomb by Artie, and I managed to do 3.5k, and I've lost more than I would have gained for that ridiculously good game. You know, just that 1 or 2% little bit easier would make those really nice one-off, well, not even one-off games, but those really nice games where you are doing better, just give you more, and it would make it a little bit kinder. Because I think that's an already frustrating process got even more frustrating, and I think that was a killer to it, essentially, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's a lot of aspects to this game that are frustrating already, and I think adding to that frustration is not a positive move. No,
not in the slightest.
No.
Like I say, like, you know, sure, you can say it was easy, and it was. I think it was easier after 6.0, but and it should be more. It should have been more difficult, but it's like it's the whole thing with tuning something. They've tuned it far too much one way.
Yeah.
And it just needs dialing back a little bit, and it's not like I say, it's not like insanely tuning it back to that 5%, making it like where the T95 E6 was like 4.1k to 3 mark or something like that, which is insanely low for a tier 10. But like, you know, just 1 or 2%, which just make the grind just a little bit nicer to do, and just a little bit more enjoyable. Give and take, it's make or break really of a 3 mark.
So the old system coming back would be preferable, and is that I didn't pay attention to it that much, but there was a lot of conversation about the latest poll that they did, and people were saying that the results that Wargaming were giving us weren't accurate based on what other people were observing. Was that an MOE poll?
that's a difficult one because it's like obviously the polls that people did with, if they did them on YouTube or they did them within their own communities, whether it be the Facebook groups or whether it be Reddit or on Discord itself,
Yeah.
the MOE polls were all like, "Hey, look, this is ridiculous." Like, essentially, it was like, "Do you think it should be the old system or not?" And most people went with old system.
Mm-hmm.
And you're looking at polls, and it's like 1,400 people voted old, 100 people voted new. That was the level of it. And then you get the news that they go through. They did this email survey, which I didn't get, by the way. Like I've checked both. I've got an alt account that I used to play a lot as well. I mean, I played it once or twice. Not even once or twice. I went to my mum moved house the other week, and I went to her house and I went on my old Xbox, and for some reason Xbox Live would just not let me log into my account. It just wouldn't let me do it. But my alt account that I used to play on a lot lets me do it. So I was like, okay, I'll have to, stick with it. I want to play the game. I'll play on this. So I played that a decent amount within the last 2 months, and I didn't get an email. They said, "Oh, if you played it in the last 90 days, you should have had it." And it was like, well, I have. And I've checked that alt account's email, which the only thing that email is subscribed to is World of Tanks. Nothing. Not even in the spam folder. And I've looked in my actual email from my actual account, and obviously done advanced searches and stuff like that, search through the spam accounts. Absolutely no email. And it's like, oh, I didn't get an email to be able to vote in this poll.
Because I did get the email, and I think I've seen a lot of people saying they didn't, and it's got me thinking I must have been the only person that did get it.
Yeah. It's one of those things, but I don't tend to get many emails from them. I don't know whether that's some sort of setting somewhere that they say, hey, look, if you want to hear, like if you sign up for a website somewhere, it says, hey, check this box, and you receive emails and promotions.
Oh, marketing information,
yeah, all that sort of stuff. I don't know if I've probably checked that off at some point, and therefore I just don't receive emails from them. That could very well be a case, and that's a me problem. But yeah, it's kind of frustrating, and I do understand though that the email has more reach. They will email that out to people, and more than likely they're going to get 20, 30, 40,000 people respond, because that's the way it is. And
and also I think another problem that the CC, the communities that each CC has represent the proportion of the community that are far more dedicated than
definitely
the remainder. So I think
most of the people that be watching you, me, Slapperfish, Eclipse, anyone like that, or watch anybody on Twitch, especially, like, they're not your average couch potato that this game probably has. In the analogy that I can't remember whoever said that. The game is based for couch potato. I think it was Mighty Jingles once when he did a video on it. Like, the game is more likely to have the average couch potato. You're very casual player that will come on, play 5-6 games, get battered about, stop playing for a bit, go have a nice drink, chill out.
Exactly.
That's what they do on a weekend. And the people that more likely to watch your YouTube channels, Twitch channels, stuff like that, are the more dedicated players, the ones that will be playing the game more, and be more involved with everything generally. And obviously, they're the ones that it's essentially the loud vocal minority.
As
much as no one likes to hear it, the people that are most vocal about the game are actually the minority half the time.
And I think that's what's happening with the CC conversations, is that the CCs represent the minority. So I believe the poll results that Wargaming released were, the CC polls were looking at like maybe 80% for, 20% against the old system. But the results that Wargaming released were more like 60-40.
Because they had like 3 answers or something like that. It was like, do you know what MOEs are? And then it's like they completely disregarded. If people said no, I haven't got a clue what MOs are, I don't care, then they completely disregarded their email completely. That's it, gone. And then their answers were only the people that said, yes, I have an MOE. Do I think it's this hard, too hard or too easy? And then they only took from their answers, essentially. And they said, like, you know, 60% people felt it was okay. And then 40% said, no, I don't like this. And then whatever. And then other people that were a bit... Well, that was the other thing. There was another thing saying, do you care? And people were like, no, not really. And then they go, right, no, that doesn't count.
Well, that's I think the proportion of people saying they don't care, that is also an important statistic. That does need to be not don't sway the yes or no for the old system, but have it to the side.
Yeah.
Because that might just represent people that don't care because they don't actually understand it.
I think what people have taken issue with the email is that it never differentiated between people that say get 1 MOE, 2 MOE, 3 MOE, because the level of difficulty is scaling, right? It's all scaling. So getting the first mark for a tank is definitely something that is a lot easier than going for the third mark. And when you are having to do such levels to get a third mark, that's where the difficulty really, really sets in. Whereas the first mark isn't as much, like, you could have those crazy one-off games for the first mark and it would increase you ridiculous amounts. It's like you'll go up 2-3% if you had like that one game where it's like 8k damage or 8k combined, I should say.
Yeah.
And you have that game, it's like, oh, it's gave me 3%, that's great, you know. But whereas at the third mark level, it's going up 0.1, 0.2. And I think a lot of people take exception with it because it's like, well, people might just look at the system and go, hey, yeah, I get 1 MOE on all of my tanks. Yeah, the system's perfectly fine. I'm happy with it. And therefore, people probably were a little bit more disheartened by it because they're like, well, yeah, it's easier to do the 1 MOE, but you never ask people if they've had third MOEs.
So,
I think it's too difficult to get the third MOE because that's what we're on about. We're not on about the first or second one, whether it's too hard to get to that position, but more the level it takes to get to that third position. And
so they put out a very general poll for quite a specific and complex system.
Yeah.
Because the average player might one mark a tank and might say, yeah, that's fine, that's easy. But the 3 markers that are out there will have a very different perspective because they're at a different level to the 1 markers, or even those that don't even 1 mark at all.
Yeah, pretty much. That's pretty much it. To be honest, because that's where people obviously want the system to change and get a little bit, well, you know, make the give and take a little bit better, because that at that level it's where it truly affects it, and that's where it's truly frustrating, as opposed to, say, the 10 or 20,000 people that do only get the 1 MOE and do go, hey, I'm fine with this.
Yeah,
this is fine.
Yeah.
And I think that, like I say, for the complex system, a generalized one general simple question wasn't quite what was needed. It needed something a little bit more specific, and I think that's where people take general uneasiness with the survey itself. Although I do think when it is something like that, and you've still got 60% of people saying, hey, this is fine, but you've still got 40% of people saying, hey, look, this is ridiculous. I still think that means not necessarily, again, going back to the full old 5% less system, but maybe going, okay, so nearly half of the recipients of this email that replied, well, not nearly half, but 10% less than that, but a significant portion of people that replied to this still think it's far too much. Maybe we should just touch it a little bit down, not all the way, but just dial it a little bit as well, because 40% is a significant portion.
Find the sweet spot,
Yeah, exactly. Enough to not pee people off that are already finding it okay, but enough to make it so that it just assuages a little bit of concern from people who obviously don't like it. It's pretty much the way it should, It was a very simple question for a very complicated or it gave a very simplified answer for a very complicated problem.
Yeah. And I would also thinking about it from a wargaming point of view, I don't think they have a particularly easy time on, like, this is such a complicated issue, but you don't want to put out a poll that is so complicated you'll put off the average player.
Yeah.
You want as many responses as you can, so you want to make the poll simple enough, but if the poll is too simple, it doesn't accurately reflect the complexity of the system being polled. So where do you draw the line? It's a very difficult thing, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't envy their situation.
Yeah, no, neither do I. But I just hope that they continue to look at it and maybe try and come up with some sort of solution for it, because the one thing we don't want them to do is what they have done sometimes in the past, whereas they just look at it and go, you know, a significant proportion of people said it was fine. We don't need to look at it anymore.
Yeah, we'll just leave it. Move on. Yeah, forget it. Move on.
And that's something that we don't really want them to do. You know, just there's some sort of solution's got to come up with it. But
I think
it's a difficult one.
From what I'm seeing in the communications between the CCs, it does look like the message has gone across.
Yes.
So we'll just have to see what happens in the future.
Yeah, I mean, from the communications that we've seen and stuff, it definitely looks like, hey, we're not giving up on it. We'll keep looking at it. So just hopefully it's not another 2 years before something happens. Although I think if I remember rightly, in one of the streams that they had, I think they said they would look at it again. I think they said they'd look at the map delta again within the next update or something like that.
Okay.
Because the map delta was the thing that they changed because of the lack of maps that we had and the lack of variety. There was the whole complicated map delta thing about it changing certain requirements for certain tanks depending on the map that they had, whether it was like a mouse on Prokhorovka needing 5k to get a nice bit of movement, or whether it was you're playing the mouse on Himmelsdorf and then it was like, okay, now it's like 6,000 or 7,000, you know what I mean? There was some complicated, I mean, I don't understand it all myself. I don't think
the bar for the MOE changes based on the type of vehicle and what map it's on.
Yes. That's their map delta thing that they go on about quite a lot, and that's something that they changed, which was supposedly the root cause, but we don't really know. That's just a explanation from Mr. SPG on Discord. There is a big thread on Discord called MOE something or other. I can't remember. It's an archived thread that you can find somewhere on the actual general World of Tanks Discord.
Yeah.
It's called MOE difficulty, sorry, and you can find that, and there is a lot of discussion. It's a very, very long thread, and there's a lot of discussion in there about it. And Mr. SPG, who is one of the server guys, or one of the guys at Wargaming anyway, who has gone into great detail about how it all works, and you know, all those sort of little nuances that they've got with it. And it's quite interesting reading, if you can get it, and it does give you a little bit more understanding on it. But they said in the stream that they would have a look at the map delta again, with the fact that they've now added more maps and we've got more variety to the maps. Again, that they can have a look at seeing what needs to be done with it again, because there's more variety now than when they changed it back, when we had like 8 or 9 less maps than we do now.
Yeah.
So, it's just a waiting game.
It's it's a lot more complex than it might first appear on the surface.
Oh yeah, it's a massively complicated, difficult thing to get your head round. It really is. But for the general player that plays the game and looks at the percentages and that, and then they have random drops, they're going, eh? So yeah, there's a lot going for it. There's a lot of complicated things that we have no idea what goes on behind the scenes. No idea.
That is true. Yes.
And that goes for a lot of things that crack stuff with our game.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that go off behind the scenes that we have no idea about. We'll never know about, and it's just the way it is, unfortunately.
Yeah. Every now and then I do get a question like, "Oh, why has Wargaming done this?" It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Ask. Will I get the answer that you want to hear? No.
Yeah. I can tell you why I think they might have done it, but honestly, I have no clue.
Yeah, pretty much. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. Well, we still like the tanks, though.
Oh, exactly. Still like playing it.
Well,
I don't know. May not be what loved before the whole 6.0, but that again, rose tinted glasses could be a factor in that and all, right?
Yeah.
But you know,
yeah, and nostalgia does play its role.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It might not be what it was before 6.0, but it's definitely a lot better now than it used to be. There's a lot of less frustrating things. As long as they don't keep doing random ass things like the colour filters and putting them in without a second thought.
What was that about? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, no,
Jeez.
yeah, I know.
Oh,
They
don't
were
ever do that
horrendous.
again. Never again do I want to see that.
I think that's one of the people's thing with wargaming, right? Is that they do stuff like that where they'll just go, "Hey, this is a good idea," slaps it into the game, and then without really, asking people, and then it's like, "Hey, what you all complaining about?"
Yeah.
And like, "Oh, you mean you don't like the color filters? Oh, well, we'll have a look at it, right? We'll have a look at it 6 months down the line. Oh, you still don't like them? Oh, right, okay, we'll take them out then."
I think that one was especially difficult to deal with because it's not like we're asking them to redo the MOE system, for example.
No.
That we've just talked about. It's just turn it off. Just take it off.
Yeah.
Just hit the delete key.
It made everything about the game look so much worse. It was just like there was no color. It was all washed out. It was horrid. And then, like, I mean, I always think about it like I get the benefit of looking through my own replays at times, and sometimes, especially now, I'll look at replays because I have a big bank of replays from. I've still never got them out that I've meant to, and it's just the way it is. And I look at it and I go, "Oh my goodness, this replay was from like 5 months ago." And then I look at it now compared to one that I've just had, and it's like, "Oh my goodness me, the game looks so much better than it did." Like I ended up finding the replay in the 4202 from a week after 6.0, and I watched it and went, "Jesus, the game looked shocking." Like
it did.
And how much better it is now is just incredible. Like the difference in changes. I'd still love it to have a nicer HUD for World War II, have that sort of that distinction. Like you play World War II, you've got this different HUD. This HUD matches the sort of vibe of the game mode, whereas Cold War has that more advanced looking, the futurist,
bit more digital age,
more modern looking sort of HUD, and that would be great. And that's definitely something I want. And when they say they're working on it or they're looking at it, I hope they are. But like compared to how the HUD was after 6.0 to now, like it's just a completely different breath of fresh air. Like at least you've got the information. They took all the information away, and then they've finally given it us all back. Stuff like the HP bars, when they came back, that was amazing because you weren't just guessing at possibly how much health someone had, because you had to look up at depending on where you've got that box, that random box they gave us, you had to look at that and take your eye off the target to see what health they had. If you were just looking at the HUD in front of you and you're looking down the barrel, you had to go, "Oh, they've got that bar, but does that bar mean 300 health or 400? And I've got 360 alpha."
Yeah, and that does matter a lot, especially. Well, I mean, when I'm playing the game in a platoon, that is crucial because you can communicate to your platoon mates. You can say, right, focus that target because they're a one bang. Because I know that you're in. I don't know. I know that you're in your Abrams, and I know that your alpha is like 500, 600. And if they're on 300, I know, right, that's a one bang for you. Might not be for me, but it is for you. So if you focus them, they're gone. So that is incredibly important, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. And stuff like having how much damage you've done. I mean, because that's something that they said was a bug immediately off the bat, right? And within 2 days, they brought the damage, how much damage was done in a game, back into the top right corner. And then it also took another 2 months to get the assistance damage and the block damage back in the corner as well. Like...
What the ribbons back as well.
Information is key.
Yeah.
That's the thing with this game. Information is key. Every little bit of information you can squeeze out of the UI and give to the player is to their, to their strength, right?
Yes.
It's why people always ask for what PC's got with... I mean, I know that it's probably never going to come to the minimap on ours, but the last known target locations. Like, people ask for that a lot. I know we're never going to get that unless you can have an adjustable minimap and make it bigger, but they have reasons that you can't do it and set stuff for consoles or whatever and have over whatever. But it would be nice if you could do that on the big map, because the big map has space for that and it's not going to look too squished, essentially.
Yeah,
but,
that is true.
Like, information is key, and at the minute, for something like that, for example, like, you just have to try and think, oh wait, there's a heavy tank left. Was that the one that was in the bottom left corner? Maybe. I'll go in that general direction, right? It could be over there. Whereas if you had that extra bit of information, you know it was in the bottom left corner, and you're like, right, I can adjust my positioning to that. But that's another thing. But yeah, the information is key. Like I said, the ribbons, I do miss the ribbons. I miss for me, the assistance ribbons is one of the things, and the kills, definitely.
Yeah.
Because number one, it differentiated between tracking and spotting ribbons. So I knew that I had 2K assistance and I had like 20 spotting ribbons, but like 2 tracking ribbons. I knew that most of it was going to be spotted, and that's useful for the ops that we have.
That is, yeah.
Where it's like just do 20,000 spotting damage or whatever, and you're like, oh. But I know that a little bit. It's
also helpful for just in-game enjoyment, because I had a game yesterday in my Scorpion 90, so top era 2 light tank for the British.
Yeah.
And I only realised at the end of the game that I had 15 spots, which, that's an achievement, because that means you detected the whole enemy team.
Oh yeah, that's quite impressive.
And it was only at the end of the game where I looked and I thought, it was actually quite funny, because I had 15 spots and only 300 spotting assists. So I thought, oh, great.
that's a point really. With obviously the ribbons, it'd be nice to know how many kills we've got on the actual normal.
Yeah, that's one.
As well.
Yeah, because it's so easy to get caught up in the game, just playing, and say for example you do want, you're going for a pools medal or whatever. If you can't easily see how many kills you've got, you might get tied up in a fight that would otherwise slow you down if you want to get kills. I don't.
Well,
we joke about kill stealing, but it doesn't really bother me that much.
No, it doesn't bother me at all either. Really, it's just you're finishing off a tank. It doesn't matter. Like, you get gun out of the game. Sometimes you might think, oh, I'm not going to steal that kill from that person who's who's in a IS7 facehugging an E100. I'm not going to steal that. They've taken most of the health. I'll leave it to them. And then you run away, and the E100 manages to take out and kill the whole IS7. You're like, well, I should have just finished it off. I was in a better position, right?
Yeah.
And you've just lost a teammate because of it. You finish off what is in front of you. You have to get rid of guns out of the game. That's how you win games.
Yeah, guns in the game is what matters, yeah.
Whether they've got 1 HP or 100, like 2k HP, they're still going to hit you for 490 alpha, 750 alpha, whatever. Their gun is still deadly.
Yeah.
And you need to, kill stealing's whatever. But like, I had a game in the EBR 75 FL10, the premium when that came out.
Yep.
And I was playing on steps. I was running around like a lunatic, doing what have you and whatever. And I ended up ending the game, managed to get back and get like a reset on the end. I think it was a reset anyway. I can't quite remember. It was a wee while ago now. I ended up getting the final kill, finished the game, and it popped up and went, yeah, you got 10 kills on the MVP screen. I'm like, what?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I did? What?
Like, I don't feel like I killed that many tanks. Like, hang on a minute. And then sometimes it's like, you feel like you kill like 3 or 4 tanks in a row consecutively, and you're like, you continue on the game and you keep battling on, and it's like 5 minutes later and you finish the game and you think, I must have had a lot of kills there, and you go back and you're like, oh wait, I only got the 3 or 4 kills I got right at the start of the game, that's it.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, okay then, that's, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas if you had the visual confirmation in your top right corner,
yeah, that's
you're like, oh. Yeah. And it changes the way you'll play as well, right? Because
yes, that's what I think.
If you're on 7 kills, you'll be like, oh, I've got to get there for the 8th kill.
Yeah, that's it. Yes. Yeah. You'll deliberately go out and look for it.
Yeah.
Rather than just mosey on playing the game as you've always as you regularly would.
Yeah. Pretty much. It changes the mindset.
Yeah. The more information we have, the better the gaming experience.
Yes. And that's one thing I thought about with Cold War that's just come to mind when you say about the ribbons and stuff like that. Medals. There's no medals in Cold War. And
we do now.
Do we now?
No, hang on.
No, we don't. I don't think we do. I think it's just Ace Tankers. That's it.
Yeah, it's just Ace Tankers, yeah.
And there's no sort of well done you for getting 6 kills, 8 kills, 10 kills, getting the most spotting in a game with the patrol duty, or getting 12 spots, like you said. Like that's what did it when you said, oh, I got 15 spots. You don't get a scout medal for getting 12 spots.
That's it.
Like there's nothing to commemorate that you did that. It's just in your memory, essentially. And there's no like drive to, oh, I'm on 5 kills, I want to go get that 6th kill and get the top gun. You know, there's none of that. It's just, game finishes. You go, oh, I did like 5k damage, nice, and that's it.
Yeah, I'm hoping that they are in the process of adding things back. They're working on it. It's all to come. That's my hope.
That's all we can hope and pray for.
Yeah, I would be very disappointed if they came out and said no, it's not ever happening. Like 5-man platoons. That is sad, in my opinion. But
5-man platoons for me were, I didn't mind that much because I didn't really particularly enjoy playing in them nor playing against them. I always was happy with playing in 3-mans, but that's
I think
those things.
I think the 4. I run into and I think Pills runs into this issue a lot as well, where having 5 people doesn't happen that often, but having 4 people does.
Yeah.
And you end up having to split into two sets of 2, which is like, ugh.
Yeah, it definitely happens. Definitely.
I do miss the because the point I think the point I've made several times is a lot of people say, oh, 5-man platoons just ends in 5 vanguards going out and wrecking everybody, which yes, I am sure. Yeah, I'm sure that's happened, and I'm sure there are people that deliberately do that. But I would say 90% of the 5-man platoons that were out there were guys who were 3 or 4 beers in, just having a laugh in game chat.
Yeah.
They weren't there to, PTFO and work on their WN8, and they weren't super unicorns.
Yeah.
They were just 5 mates having fun.
And
I feel that's what Wargaming's taken. Wargaming, by taking this out, they have reduced my ability to socialise with the people that I would want to socialise with.
I think for the balancing of matches, it's probably better that it's limited down to 3. But for the socialised aspect, it's definitely damaged it in that sort of way that you can't just be like, hey, look, with 4 or 5 mates playing, let's just go have some fun in a tier 8, tier 9, tier 10, whatever tier you want to play in, tier 5 even, You can't just have that option to go and just have a laugh and run around like lunatics,
That's it, yeah.
You've lost that option. Now, I do get the reason they did it, though, because there was a lot of times where there was, it was complete matchmaking failures, and it happened often, where you'd find that you'd end up, it still happens with 3 in a platoon, sorry, but where you'd end up finding that you'd have 2 5-man platoons, and it would give you 5 tier 8s and give the opposition team 5 tier 10s. and then there'd be like one tier 9 on either side, and the other side would end up with like more tier 10s than tier 8s, and you're like, oh, so the matchmaking has just basically cost everybody the game because it couldn't fit this platoon, and it just tried to squeeze the 2 platoons together into a game, and it found that there was only one 5-man platoon at tier 10 and one at tier 8.
Well, that is an interesting point, though, I think, because I have had it several times, and I remember this because it was it sticks out in my mind because of that point exactly. I think it's really easy to look at the team listings at the start of a game and say, "Oh, great! Look at that match! Look at the match! Look how terrible the matchmaker is! This is awful! This is crap!"
And then you've lost the game already in your own mind.
Yeah, you're thinking that the game starts and you just start playing, and then not only do you survive the game, but you do all right in your bottom tier, and your team wins. But by the time the MVP screen comes up, you've forgotten what you were thinking at the start of the game, and you just carry on straight into the next match. Yeah. And the number of times I've thought, especially with 5-man platoons, I thought, 5-man platoon of tier 8s and there's a 5-man platoon of tier 10s. It's like, yeah, but there have been several times where I remember thinking, wait, we won that game, and their 5-man platoon died, and they were 2 tiers up. And I think it's really easy, and I know for whatever reason, gamers seem to have this mindset of, I'm looking at the starting conditions, and that means that I know exactly how things are going to end. It's like, well, really, you don't have a crystal ball. You don't know how it's going to work out.
It's like the PC stuff with XVM, and you know how they had a thing where it says like, you've got a 30% chance to win, and people would just go, oh, stupid teams, and then quit out. Like, if you quit out, you're guaranteed. Well, if it was 2 or 3 people, you're guaranteed your team's going to lose more than likely, unless someone really truly, unless like a platoon or someone or whatever truly carries their pants off. Like, more than likely, you're 3 tanks down, and it's a team game. It's going to collapse quite easily because you don't have enough people to provide support. And if you do have that, you can always affect your games. It doesn't matter whether you're bottom tier, top tier, mid tier. You will always have an impact on your games. If you can have the biggest impact, you will have the biggest chance of winning. And no matter what, you're always going to have that. You just got to try and find a way of doing it. You never give up at the start of a game, because that's
exactly never give up. That is a very true word there. Very true. Never give up. And I think that's one of the things that when I played World War II a lot, I advocated against +1 -1 on the basis that you don't know how it's going to end, and if it's made too easy all the time, you'll get bored. And I mean, that was the case pre 6.0, I think. Post 6.0, I've not played it enough to comment, but +1 -1 isn't happening for Wargaming have stated why it's not going to happen. So I do think that conversation does need to come to a close. But
it's one of those things that unfortunately it's never going to happen. So they'll have the odd weekend here and there for us, but that's it.
Yeah,
and it's just one of those. It's unfortunate. I'm both for and against it. I don't mind being bottom tier. It's just there's sometimes when you do get slapped about by the matchmaker in a night, and it will just go, hey, you wanted to play your tier 8, and now you're just going to play tier 10 every single game, every game. And you're like, I just want to see a sort of a more balanced matchup here every now and then. That would be nice. But at the same time, I'm not too fussed about being more bottom tier, because it depends on the tank you're in, because there are some tanks where you get bottom tier and you go, well, we're doomed.
I did put together a matchmaker video where I compared PC to console.
Yes.
And I believe the average wait time on PC was something like I'll probably get this completely wrong. I think the average wait time on PC was something like 1 minute and 18 seconds. That's probably wrong. but console's average wait time was more like 15 seconds in the queue.
Yeah, I remember when they changed their matchmaking system, because that's when I was still playing that version quite heavily.
Right.
And it went to 357, and queue times did get longer, and matchmaking became significantly worse, generally. And that's where they've, obviously, that's one of those things, they bring that in, they change it to the point now where I do go on it every now and then and play it, and it's definitely a lot quicker, but because of the way that the system works and what it tries to fit into its little 357, and I think it was 510, I think they were the two number systems that they had.
Yeah.
It was always going to take longer because it was trying to slot the tanks into that, balance the tanks into those 510, 357 slots, and then also balance the teams by having 7 heavy tanks on each team, etc., etc. So it just took longer. Yeah. Nowadays, it tends to be 30, 40 seconds you're in. It's fairly similar to us, really, unless you're playing Era 3.
I think the nature of console works against it, though, because PC... I mean, if you're going to spend the time buying a PC that can run World of Tanks with, you know, HD textures and all that, you're more invested into that as a hobby. So I think by nature, console is more casual. So they're not people aren't going to sit there for a minute and a half waiting for a game.
No, they're going to be like, this is taking too long.
Yeah,
right,
but if they, if people were more patient, then I think the matchmaker would be able to deliver what they want. Because there's a, with the community, it seems to be there's a give and take to everything. Like, if you're prepared to wait longer in a queue, you won't get tier 10 every time you take out your tier 8. If you want +1 -1 in the game, that's what Wargame will give you. But the take is you have to allow bots at all tiers. Like, you have there has to be a compromise somewhere, and the community does need to work out what it is happy to accept and what it isn't happy to accept.
And I know the one thing that a lot of people probably isn't happy to accept is bots on a regular kind of thing. So, like, when they say, oh, we can't have +1 -1 because of this, it's like, well, probably a good thing, because we don't want to be playing a game where it's constantly always going to have like 3, 4, 5 bots in a game. Like, at that point,
I'm not sure it would, to be honest. I don't think
it would. I think it would literally just be at the quiet times, essentially, that might happen. But I think if it would come to that, where it's like, wait, hey, if you kept this matchmaking system and you never saw bots in your games pretty much ever, unless you were playing at like 4 in the morning, which, you know, up to you, then
of course,
you know, then you don't if you don't have to ever see the bots, then you don't have +1 -1. I think that's the way I personally would probably be happy with. But obviously, again, it's all personal opinion, isn't it? It's down to what people like, what people want.
Well, based on my experience in Cold War, I think I remember 2 games specifically where I remember thinking, what on earth is this player doing, only to realise it's a bot.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've played at all hours, and only twice do I remember there being matches that came down to players versus bots, which felt a little bit odd. And in one scenario, a bot did actually beat out 2 players. So, you know, hey for my team.
I was going to say, sometimes the bots are better.
They're not all bad, you know. So I honestly don't. Given the player split between World War II and Cold War, if I'm not noticing bots all that much, and I'm a regular player and I play Cold War a lot, if I'm not noticing it, I don't really think it will be an issue for World War II. I don't think it will be as bad as people think it might be.
I don't. It probably wouldn't be. To be
and
fair.
They could. I don't see why Wargaming couldn't try it. Try it for a week. Allow bots in World War II, and give people +1 -1, and see how it goes.
Yeah, and see how many games out of thousands that it ends up being with bots. Because that's what they're saying, is that their matchmaking failures become significantly higher with +1 -1 on their non-peak times. That's when they're most likely to get matchmaking failures. and that's why they don't want to do it. So it's like, well, okay, do it. You know, if you're going to allow it for just a weekend, you know, where it's 2 or 3 days, where that's all it affects. See how many games are played. Oh, I say weekends are probably the worst times, to be fair, actually, because it's outside their peak times that they talk about.
Yeah.
But yeah, you give it for a couple of days and you say, well, okay, we're gonna have it so bots are more likely in games, but you're not gonna, you know, when you play normal times, you play your normal tier, you probably end up playing 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in the evening. You're more likely going to get normal games. It's just going to pan out like exactly like normal because the server numbers are high. But once you're going beyond that, it's likely you might come across bots, might being the operative word. And then...
Anyway, yeah, crazy ideas that wargaming have.
Yeah, I don't think anyone truly knows what goes on in wargaming's mind half the time.
No.
When, I think... Obviously, we know they are pre-planned. Like they know what's coming up. They know what they're working on for the next year. So they already know what the season pass is probably going to be in a year's time, essentially.
Yes.
And whatever that is planned in that roadmap, God knows. It would be nice to know.
There was talk of publishing the roadmap, yeah.
There was, yeah, and then it's kind of
fizzled out,
swept under the carpet a little bit.
Yeah.
But it'd be nice, like, hey, look. I mean, I think Pain God does it a lot on stream. He will just blurt out something that's coming up in the next 3, 4, 5 months and say, "Oh, we're working on that. And that's coming up then." And he probably shouldn't do, but he does. But
yeah, there are a lot of with air quotes here. There are a lot of leaks in the background of his videos.
Yes, there definitely are. Yeah. I think he loves it, to be honest with you. I think he absolutely loves it when he's on stream because he can just let loose and start telling people things that they're working on because he seems to be kind of excited about it all the time. So he's like, oh yeah, we're working on that. That's coming up some point soon. That's coming up at some point soon. That's something that we didn't have before 6.0 and obviously didn't have leading up to 6.0. We had no idea.
Right, that's my doorbell. Sorry, that's my doorbell again. I'll be right back.
No worries.
Sorry, I cut you off again.
That's fine. What was I going about? Pain God
and his streams, yeah.
That's something that we didn't have pre 6.0 is that sort of information coming out that we're working on this, that's coming probably in 3 months time, 4 months time, or that's coming like in 2 months. And that's why we all got blindsided so much by 6.0 because there was absolutely zero information out there about the updates. And when updates happened, like even before 6.0, you're talking about 5.0 and all the other points out there. No one knew what was going to happen until on day of patch note release, and that was it. Like, and then you'd be like, "Oh right, okay." You know, updates would always blindside you. The only thing that we knew about with coming up close was the 5.0 update when they said, "Hey, look, we've actually got the go-ahead to have crossplay enabled." So that's
I remember that actually. That was good.
That
was a good update.
That was a good update.
Really shook things up.
There's a lot of people that go, "Oh, 5.0 was terrible because gameplay went down the drain, etc., etc." Well, that's natural. It's going to happen because different metas from different consoles smash together, and it causes a bit of disorientation. But eventually, it gets going again, and the server number increases were exponential. Like for us on Xbox, it was like 8,000 or 9,000 at peak, and then we went to like 25,000, 26,000 at peak. And we've not seen these numbers since 2015, 2016. Like, goodness gracious. This is great.
The popularity on PlayStation is a lot higher than Xbox, and I don't know if that's due to the way the Xbox store promotes games or what have you, but
I have no idea on that one. I do notice though that if you were, because I very rarely play NA because my connection to NA is absolutely woeful. I don't know what it is about it. It always has been. Like, I just have extreme lag. But when you play on NA tends to have more Xbox players than PlayStation, and then vice versa. You play on EU, and you tend to notice that there's more PS players in it. But PlayStation Day definitely increased the numbers, which was great. And it was something that was needed because the server pops needed to go up, and having that combined server pop was always going to be great for the game, and having that sort of parity between the two consoles, wonderful.
Yeah. There is a Twitter page that I follow that releases stats every week. And
yeah, the WoT stats tracker
yes,
or whatever it's
yeah,
called.
I think you know it, yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see the breakdowns, and I think overall numbers are steadily increasing. It's not the game isn't failing as some folks would claim.
I think it took a massive hit after 6.0.
Yes.
Like, a lot of people left. And then gradually, slowly but surely, a lot of people have come back.
Yeah.
But not all, which is obviously damaging in itself to the veteran player base. But there's still... I mean, you notice it when you play Cold War Era 1, the amount of people that are brand spanking new, and they are playing. And I think you notice it more in Era 1 Cold War, because obviously that's where they get put and they play the M46A1. And you'll be playing against people, and you're sitting there playing against them, and they're just doing weird things again, and you're like, that must be a bot. You look and it's like, oh, it's a person in their first 100 games. And there's a lot of that happening. And you're like, okay, so there is that. And with that, you do experience it, you feel like, oh, there is quite a few new players knocking about.
Yeah, the new player experience, that's a whole other topic, I think. Cause,
that's a whole other ballgame. I don't think any of us will truly get the whole new player experience because we're not new players.
No.
The
only way I could do it is to create a new account, start from scratch, but I've still got my almost 5 years of gameplay experience. But so many times, I love the FV107, and so many times I've been playing that, circling a T44, and I've actually done this a few times where I've thought, you know what, I can tell this is a brand new player, and I'll disengage from the fight and I'll leave them alone. Because at that point it's like, nah, I don't want to be the reason someone uninstalls, especially as a content creator. I don't want to promote that kind of play either.
That's possibly why I get a little bit bored at times when I'm playing Era 1, especially because it's kind of like
possibly
I'll play quite a few games and then it's like I'll have run into newer players quite a lot, and you will just completely destroy them. And it's like that poor person had absolutely no chance. Like they didn't really know what was going on, and it's like Erlenberg. I'll take Erlenberg as the example, and they will go and sit on top of one of the hills on Erlenberg, and then just sit there scanning the ridge on the far side looking for shots. But all the while they're also getting absolutely obliterated because they're sat perfectly on top of the ridge.
Yep.
And they're taking all of the hits, and they don't move. They just sit there because they're still like, hey, I can see those people over there. I'm just going to shoot them, and then die. And they're like, oh, I blew up because they were sat in the completely. They weren't using the tank right. They weren't playing tactically enough. But they didn't have the awareness that you gain from playing a lot of times to notice, oh wait, I'm going to blow up. I really should do something different. The
whole new player experience does need to be addressed, and I think there needs to be a noob area, or at least 10 or 20 games at the start where it's you just playing bots.
Yeah, putting co-op in.
Well, they've got co-op. Yeah, they've got co-op now. So I suppose maybe the new player experience needs to be just co-op until you unlock multiplayer.
Games that you play that are free to play have training levels.
They do, yeah.
And you will play the levels, and you can't do anything else in the game until you've gone through the levels, and it tells you, hey, look, you press A to reload a shell. You use LT to aim. You press the right stick in to increase your zoom and decrease your zoom. All the little basics. And then you give a little reward for completing the basics. Like, hey, here's a free 130% extra Commander XP commander. One of the top-notch commanders. You go, hey, here's this for free. Look, you can put this in your tank. It will train up quicker. And this commander makes your tank better. And then it kind of has that little thing of, hey, look, this commander makes your tank better. If you have a commander in your tank is better. This is what you do with the commander. These are your skills, etc., etc. Just little explanations. It might take a little bit of time. Obviously, I know that might annoy a more casual player that just wants to get stuck in head first.
Yeah.
But it's a very big learning curve game, and
it's massive. Yeah, that is so easy to forget.
They have to know the basics to be able to move on to the more arduously complicated things that might affect them.
Yeah. Of course.
And
yeah.
if they don't know the basics, how are they ever going to survive in this game, or how are
Yeah.
they ever going to not get blown up instantly by driving in the open and then be like, this is rubbish, I died again. Can't bother to keep getting smacked about.
Yeah.
And then
Uninstall.
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. It's. I think I do think Wargaming are aware that does need to be addressed. So we'll just, watch the space and see what happens. I suppose.
Hey, hopefully they'll come up with some good tutorials.
I hope so.
We're working on tutorials, so hopefully they come up with something that can be used to help people. Yeah. Even if it was like, I think I remember the old 360 tutorial. It was similar. It was similar to the PC tutorial, where it was like literally, look, you drive to this spot, you shoot. You have to lead your targets on moving targets. You use these buttons to do this. That's it. Off you go.
Yeah.
And that was a basic tutorial that didn't really cover much, but it still told you how to do the basics of move and shoot, and how you're not like other FPS titles, whereas if you are pointing at someone, it's going to hit, the bullets are going to hit exactly where you're aiming.
Yeah, they're not like they're not lasers.
Yeah, you actually have to. You've got a shell, and that shell is going to have to travel the distance to that tank. Therefore, you're going to have to lead, etc., etc.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, we have been going for 2.5 hours now. So this is going to be a one heck of a video.
Sorry everybody for everybody for everyone listening. We kind of went on a little bit.
It went on. Yeah, we were only supposed to talk about MOEs. Anyway.
Yeah, we were. Yeah.
All right. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, man.
Yes, thank you very much for having me on.
I really appreciate your time, and we will have to do this again because I think that we can dive into some more details of specific topics.
I think we definitely could. I think on the evidence of the 2.5 hours.
Yeah. All right. Well, I really appreciate it, and I will be inviting you back on. So,
awesome.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.
See ya.